Hello everybody, welcome to Changing Gears with Chris here. Today, I got the opportunity to interview Kyle Cusick. Kyle Cusick is a professional boxer. He fights out of Fall River, Massachusetts, and he fights for Boston Boxing Promotions. He has an upcoming fight against Stephen Kirkwood in his hometown of Fall River, March 29th. Grab your tickets at www.bostonboxingpromotions.com. I'll link it in the description below. And I hope you guys enjoy this interview. I'm very grateful I got to ask Kyle Cusick a few questions about his upcoming fight and his career as a boxer. So let me know what you guys think. Remember to like and subscribe, show your support in the comments below, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hello everybody, this is Changing Gears with your host Chris Gear. Today we have Kyle Cusick. He has an upcoming fight March 29th against Stephen Kirkwood. So yeah, let's get right into it. I'm going to ask Kyle a few questions here. So starting off strong, so how does it feel fighting in your hometown again, first time since 2023?
It's awesome. Before the fight in September in 23, I didn't know if I'd ever get that opportunity to be able to fight in my hometown. So, it's a blessing to be able to have as many of my friends and family who want to be there be able to attend. I've been really lucky where my crowd has traveled to New Hampshire, Andover, up around Boston, and made the trek for some of my other fights. But it's a lot easier to reach out to people and let them know, hey, it's right in our hometown. You don't have to leave work early. You don't have to get a half day. It's 10 minutes from home when you can get there. So
Right, yeah. So
that part's awesome.
Yeah, the logistics of it work a lot better for, your longtime fans, hometown fans. It's perfect. So do you study your opponents extensively or at all? And if so, what have you seen in Stephen Kirkwood's game to be confident that you're going to walk away with the win on March 29th?
I think most people do. I definitely do film study, try to find tape on your opponent and look at it. To be honest, it's not something that I kind of spin out in my head over. I definitely look over those fights, but I don't sit down every night and watch footage over and over again. I honestly just spend more time working on what I can control and improvements I can make. I feel like if I go out there and I fight to my potential and I listen to the direction that I get from my coaches, that's really what matters most. I can't control how my opponent tacks the fights. I'm not privy to any changes or improvements that they're working on or game planning for this camp. So, how a guy might have looked in there on footage from 3 months ago, a year ago, doesn't necessarily mean that's the guy that, you're going to be facing that night, but Steven's he's a big, strong guy. He always comes with a good work rate. Even in his lone loss, there's no quitting him. So, I've really kind of focused more on what I have to do to put myself in a place to go out there and get my hand raised and fully expect a full 6 rounds from my opponent and, a tough fight.
Right, and kind of building off of that question, have you changed any aspect of your training coming into this fight? I don't know if you've had a 6-round fight before or more. Assume more.
No, yeah. So my last fight on Thanksgiving Eve was actually my first scheduled 6-round fight, and I ended up getting the stoppage in that fight about a round and a half in, so I didn't get the opportunity to go the full 6 rounds. But my training camp and my preparation for camps is, I feel like this is my 10th pro fight. I've kind of locked in what works for me. I try not to, reinvent the wheel. I had a long layoff before that fight on Thanksgiving Eve, so that camp was a little different. And I've had a lot of camps where, my coaches will let you know that I kind of put on some weight and did some eating. So those camps kind of become like a whole training camp, working to improve on fighting and sparring, and also cutting weight, 20, 30 pounds. Thankfully, I've kind of locked the diet in a little bit. I did a good job of not going crazy over the holidays. So this camp, I've really just been able to prepare on boxing related things, not just also worrying about every single thing I eat or getting extra work in just for the idea of weight loss. My weight's been good. On Thanksgiving Eve, I fought at junior middleweight at 154. And, this fight was presented to me at middleweight at 160. So, and I've fought at 160 a handful of times too. But, the biggest difference I'd say maybe in this camp is that because my weight's been good, I've been able to kind of maximize my workouts, properly fuel myself as opposed to doing keto and coming to the gym on a low carb diet and kind of feeling like I'm drained. So that's probably the biggest difference with this camp and some of my previous ones.
Right, and I'm aware you train with heavyweights. Do you feel like that has helped you over the course of your career? I know a lot of guys like to train with heavyweights, heavier guys, to get a little glimpse of what that power feels like, what the weight feels like. Better conditions you for, being hit, maybe carrying someone else's weight in the clinch. Has that helped your game, and do you view that as a big advantage in your preparation for not only this fight, but for your past competitions as well?
Yeah, I don't necessarily, honestly, I'm not in there sparring with heavyweights, but, if a guy's, if we're within 10, 15 pounds of each other, that's, you're not shying away from that sparring. So I think it always helps a little bit to feel that power of bigger guys, knowing that on that night, you're coming down in weight and, hopefully the guy in front of you isn't as big or strong as what you've been in there, sparring with, more so than heavyweights. I think just how we kind of attack sparring is I'm usually in camp with guys who are better than me, or we're going to gyms sparring against guys who are better than me. I'm not worried about losing sparring. I'd rather go in and go through camp with really tough sparring, knowing that I can hang in there. And if instances happen where I might get clipped or get hurt, I know I can hold it down and react to that. So more so than the weight differential, it's just I kind of am cognizant of being in there and sparring with guys that are better than me.
Right.
Guys who go in there and spar with brand new guys and maybe go in and beat the brakes off them and they feel good about themselves. At the end of the day, there's not really a net gain from that. You're not learning anything. So I just try to focus on making my sparring as challenging as possible. As much as we can do on the front end, so that night there's less surprises and you can feel confident in front of the crowd.
Right. And kind of building off that question as well, and in your preparation for this fight, are there any mistakes you've made in your previous bouts, particularly against Julio Beltrago, that you are looking to kind of correct in this matchup, or do you think the stars are kind of aligned and you're ready to just get out there and do your thing?
No, yeah, absolutely. I'm far from a finished product. I don't think we truly ever are. There's definitely things I've noticed in that fight, and other fights that I've watched back that I can improve on. Not that I'm going to list out, publicly, just game planning wise, but there's definitely, the last fight specifically, it's kind of I still saw things, but not a huge sample size. The fight was over about a minute and a half into the second round, so it wasn't a huge sample size. But I'm always going back through my footage and seeing any of those bad habits I might notice or inconsistencies that I need to tighten up. And my coaches, Libby and Al, see all those things when they present themselves in either sparring or mitt work or just training. So always looking to identify gaps in the game and try to tighten those up as much as we can in the lead up to the fight.
Right. And this being your last fight, what are the emotions like fighting for the last time in your hometown? Is it bittersweet? Is it kind of the ending to your career, like the best one you could have asked for? How are the emotions leading into this fight?
Yeah, I'd say bittersweet for sure. But also super grateful, that I don't have to do this. I get to do it. I'm lucky enough that, I've been afforded this opportunity to be able to say, when I look back, I tested myself and was able to compete in professional boxing in some manner. So it's bittersweet, but boxing to me is kind of it's an incredibly selfish sport. If you want to try to be successful, and while that fight night, I'm the one in there taking punches. Still, it kind of reverbs through everybody. Your family feels it. Spend a lot of time away from my wife and family. She's getting home from work. I'm leaving for the gym. In the morning, I'm at the gym while she's getting ready for work. Time I get home, it's almost time. It's time to eat and go to bed. It's a lot of hours dedicated. Events on the weekend that might be missed because I have sparring set up or something else related to my camp. And I had always, I kind of gave her my word that once I turned, I'd wrap it up before 40, and unfortunately it's got here a little quicker than I anticipated. I mean, I didn't take my first professional bout till I was about a month before I turned 35. So, super grateful that I was able to, hit that little goal I had in my mind once I realized I was going to be more than just doing this one and done, where, I was able to squeeze in 10 fights, this being the last one. And, the idea of being able to, close the curtain in a competitive fight with a real tough guy in my hometown just seemed like the perfect way to go out. I don't turn 40 till November. I could have snuck in another one, in the summer or the fall. But rather than sneaking in another fight in maybe Melrose or Boston or New Hampshire, once Peter told me he had a plan to come back to Fall River, it just seemed like the perfect way to end this chapter.
Right, definitely. Okay, so when and how did you start this boxing journey? What age, and what truly encouraged you to get on this road and kind of go down this path?
Yeah. So I spent, my entire childhood, probably since I was 4 or 5, playing hockey, and that was my life, 5 6 days a week. My dad driving me all over Massachusetts and Rhode Island, trips to Lake Placid, New York for tournaments, or Montreal. That was just our sole focus. And, I was lucky enough to grind and make our varsity hockey team my freshman year. So I played my freshman year, and even throughout hockey, I just was an aggressive kid. Before we were allowed to check in the younger ages, I'd be out there checking, getting into fights, defending my goalie, things like that. And then my junior year of high school kind of culminated in me getting into a few fights and things throughout our high school hockey season, where I was kind of not kicked off, but asked to step away from the team for the remainder of that year. And it was really at that point, I was maybe just turned 16. A childhood friend of mine, Corey, who had been training with Libby at the PAL for a little while, kind of put the bug in my ear and was like, hey, man, like, you like fighting so much. Why don't you come to the gym? That's the point here. You're not going to get in trouble for it. That's like that's the name of the game. And that was it. I went up. At that point, I had never had a season in my life where I wasn't at the rink playing hockey, so I had the time, and I started going up to the PAL. I hung around long enough that Libby saw that I was serious and that I'd take his coaching as best as I could, and then he started, putting time and effort into me. And a few months later, I had my first amateur fight.
Hell yeah. So when you look back at all your training and getting into boxing, who do you give credit to for being your inspirations? Was it anyone, someone in your family, another boxer? And did you ever see anyone in the gym who you maybe were watching train and you saw them and said, I want to do that. That's what I want to, that's what I want to be. Is there anyone that you saw that was like that? Like, who was your inspiration?
Okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, there was. as far as like boxing influences, my top of the list, my GOAT is always Marvin Hagler. He's always the first name that comes to mind. I remember my dad as a kid showing me the Hagler Hearns fight and how he talked about that fight, and how Marvin had to fight for every ounce of respect he earned. The kind of raw decision he got against Sugar Ray, and the fact that he was a local guy, right? He's from Brockton, which is a short drive from Fall River, and what I'd learned later is he'd even been up to our gym. Jerry LaFlamme was a professional out of our gym back around that time, and when Jerry was a kid, Hagler would just come up to the PAL. They'd set up sparring there. To me, he'll always be, the best middleweight in history. So, that was a big influence for me, just as far as like professional boxers, stars, in the gym, when I had first started, like at a more, intimate level, for lack of a better way to put it, when I first came into the gym as a 16-year-old and started training, we had Jason Pyers in the gym, who was a super featherweight professional boxer. He was an alternate on the Olympic team with Floyd Mayweather, and he was still competing at that time. And just kind of soaking up how he carried himself, just observing Jay. He was the first in the gym, the last one out. If any of us kids went and had a question for him on something or asked how we did something, he never big timed us. He would always be willing to, he was humble. And, that made a big impression on me as a new guy who didn't know at that point, even how to throw punches properly. I just like to fight. So those are the ones that come to mind, and then, Mickey Ward's a big folk hero out here, and some of the wars he was in. So, I kind of harken back to some of those guys.
Yeah, definitely. And in your training, you train with Libby Medeiros?
Medeiros, yep.
Yeah, Medeiros. So, training with him, what lessons has he taught you or given you that you want to pass down to this next generation of boxers and athletes? What have you taken away from your years training with him that you really want to give to boxers that might be, at a younger age, maybe struggling to find motivation or just in a tough spot?
Yeah. Look, I've learned more than I could ever list from Libby, about boxing specifically, and he's taught me probably just as much about life outside of boxing and how to carry yourself, be a man, be responsible for people that you care about. He's been training people for over 50 years. And I think one of the biggest things I've taken away from Libby is just how he takes care of his boys. Everybody has pride, but, Libby, I've never seen him let it get in the way of the safety of his fighters. He never sugarcoats things. I left sparring the other day and asked how he thought it went. And he said, I'm not mad at all. And I'm not mad at all is, a compliment coming from him. I've seen how he kind of tailors, how he pushes, motivates, or trains guys. I don't think this sport is one size fits all by any means. Whereas one guy you might need to build up a little bit, another guy you can get in his ear and be a little harder on, depending on how they react to those coaching methods. I've seen that in him. And like I said, just outside of the ring, I mean, this is a guy who labored in Boston every day, then flew back to Fall River to open the gym for us every night. Back then, he was opening Saturday and Sunday mornings too. And we're talking for free. It's the Police Athletic League. No one's pulling a salary or getting paid for the hours that they're there. And it didn't matter if he was shooting back to the city to open the gym for sparring for professionals, training for a fight, or if it was just a bunch of kids looking for something to do other than getting in trouble or being on the streets. He was always there. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know or be able to absorb about boxing, but he's always willing to share it. And I think we're super lucky now that we have Al, who actually does our training with us while we Zoom Libby in every night for the coaching. And now Al's that guy, working all night, still opening the gym up, doing mitt work with 4 or 5 guys in a row, 4 or 5 rounds apiece, kind of as an extension of Libby. And again, doing this because he cares about the program and the guys there, not doing it because he's getting rich off it. But overall, Lib's just taught me how to face adversity, properly take care of the people around you that you should be taking care of, and even how to, you got to embrace those times when you might fall short, and how to, turn that into a positive going forward.
Right, definitely. And you kind of answered this earlier, but I know you said kind of the time away from your family combined with your age, and your goal was 10 fights. Is there anything else that made you decide to wrap it up March 29th? Do you feel as if you've accomplished everything you've wanted to, or is there something else that you felt you wanted to accomplish, or what was going on in the decision making to kind of call it a career on March 29th?
Yeah, like you said, we spoke about it a little before, but after I had a few fights, I kind of mapped out a couple goals with a buddy Chris from mine, who is part of a gym out in California, and we kind of came up with, I wanted to finish with a winning record as a pro, or something that I didn't as an amateur. At that point, I might have had 4, 5, 6 fights, and I was like, it'd be nice to hit that number 10, And then the other one was to kind of be nice if I could get a cool opportunity on a big card, an undercard somewhere, which some other local guys have had. And that opportunity actually did present itself a couple Thanksgivings ago. When Nico Ali Walsh, which is the grandson of Muhammad Ali, we had a contract ready to sign. I was fighting Thanksgiving Eve, and there was a bout at Madison Square Garden on a Vasily Lomachenko undercard, and basically, win this fight, and we'll sign the contract as soon as you get out of the ring. And while I won the fight, I ended up with, some headbutts, elbows, stuff that happens while you fight. And I had a couple, staples in my head from elbows, and my eye swollen shut. And, the turnaround for the bout at Madison Square Garden was like less than a month away. And I wouldn't have been cleared medically to be able to get in there. So that opportunity kind of came and passed and never circled back. So then, looking at things in the grand scheme of things, my age, it's a young man's game. I'm 39. Think I've yet to fight anybody who's younger than me. When the opportunity to main event, the first card Peter did here in September of 23, I hadn't hit my 10 fights yet, but that also could have been an appropriate ending. I never would have thought I'd be able to say, I main evented the first professional boxing card in Fall River in over 30 years. To me, that meant a lot to me. And now, with him circling back here with this big card in about 10 days, the opportunity to be able to again main event in my hometown just seems like a suitable way to end it.
Yeah. So when you do hang up the gloves, March 29th, I don't know if you already do coach the youth or you've done training by yourself without your other head coaches. Do you plan on, once you hang it up, do you plan on coaching the youth and kind of continuing your boxing journey in a different way? Or do you just feel it's a good time to hang it up, leave it in the past, it's behind you? Or do you want to coach the youth?
Yeah, no, I don't see a world where that in my life that's completely absent of boxing. It's been such a positive aspect of my life. And yeah, already I have my, I went and got my USA license for helping to corner amateur fighters, and over the last couple of years, I've helped Alan Libby just kind of as a second in the corner for some of our amateur guys. My buddy Mike has a gym we work with, loves boxing, where I've helped corner him with some of his guys. But it's definitely something I want to continue. Al's younger brother, Avant, just won the All New England Golden Gloves at the 165 pounds. He's heading to Tulsa for the Nationals in May. Mikey Alves out of our gym fights at 132. He's won the Southern New England gloves down here. Should have won them again this year, outside of a rough decision. So I definitely enjoy, and I think I can find and kind of feed that competitive nature I have through them. Really hardworking kids, easiest guys to get behind. I honestly feel like I'm more exhausted and worked up cornering and helping out these guys than I am fighting myself. You kind of live and die by it because you see all the hard work and the hours and how they do things the right way. And, to be able to even just be a small part of that for whatever they need feels like a natural transition into that next phase.
Right.
Without taking the head punches, which will please my wife.
Yeah. So I know it's hard to narrow it down to kind of one thing or maybe one saying, but if you could, what's one important thing across your life in combat sports? Maybe it's a saying or just a piece of advice that you're going to carry through, the rest of your life, whether it's coaching or just your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing that you can kind of carry beyond your boxing journey?
To me, boxing, like what it encapsulates, I think it's the only place like there's no cheating in the game. I grew up playing team sports. You can bust your ass and have a teammate drop the ball or miss a tackle, or you can mess up yourself and you can always shift blame. Even if you were the one not prepared sufficiently.
Yeah.
And what I love about boxing is that, you get what you put in, the judging of fights, the subjectiveness of it is a whole different story. That's not to say you can't do everything right and still end up on the wrong end of an outcome. But I think for me, I like the fact that, any shortcuts, half measures that you might have taken, they're going to show. So I like the fact it's kind of, like they call it, the ultimate truth chamber. And another part of it for me is I feel like it provides like a singularity of purpose. Like once that bell rings, the guy across the ring's looking to detach you from consciousness for however long you're in there. Like nothing else matters, and I haven't found, another world where that singularity of purpose is so well defined. I've made bonds in this sport with people I never knew before that I'm pretty confident will last me the rest of my life. And just how much I've been able to test myself, prove to myself that I can endure more than, our minds typically tell us. I've seen that as well in, a lot of our younger guys too, that have come in and trained. So, I know some people look at it like, oh, it's a violent thing. It's fighting, but it's so much more than that. To me, it's a great tool to breed self-confidence, discipline, resiliency, and at the end of the day, really, truly finding out what we're capable of if we push ourselves through some of those self-imposed limitations we just assume that we have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's all for me. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, good luck March 29th. And
thank you very much. Appreciate it, man.
Congrats on an amazing career.
No, thank you, man. I'm just happy to get through it and, leave healthy and give everybody who's come out and supported me 110% effort. It's all I can control.
Hell yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
I just want to give a special thanks to Boston Boxing Promotions for letting me interview one of their fighters. It was an amazing experience getting to talk to Kyle Cusick, and I love talking to fighters and athletes from these different combat sports like boxing, wrestling, or jiu-jitsu. Let me know in the comments below who you guys are excited to see on this card on Boston Boxing Promotions, and let me know who you guys think is going to win, Kyle Cusick or Stephen Kirkwood. And remember to snag your tickets now at www.bostonboxingpromotions.com. I'll leave the link in the description below. And yeah, remember to like and subscribe and leave some support. It means the world to me. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Let's change some gears.